This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. I think that's about my favorite couple of sentences in the Bible, because that's what it's all about. This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. And I guess he might have added something to that, listen to him. Listen to him and do what he tells you to do. Sometimes parents probably feel that way too when they give instructions to their kids. Well, there's a preacher that tells a story that I read, and he tells his story of his early days experiences. And he's describing one particular instance in which he says, I thought my heart would skip a beat. I was so excited. I was 16 at the time, and it was a magic moment. We all held hands around a campfire. The wooden cross stood out against a moonlit sky. The waves of the lake seemed to beat against the shore in perfect time with the music. Our hearts were united as we sang chorus after chorus. The Bible camp leader led us in prayer. We added our own prayers. No one wanted to leave the campfire. The moment was just too perfect. It is well to be here, I thought to myself. The preacher writes, I felt as if I had at that very moment a glimpse of God's glory. I wanted to stay by that campfire forever. Well, I suspect many of you here today have had a similar experience, maybe around a campfire or someplace else. I don't believe that that preacher is the only person to have had a powerful religious experience at some point in their life, maybe at a Bible camp. But those kind of experiences are not confined to Bible camps. Some people even have them in a worship experience. Perhaps once in a while in worship, the music is majestic and the preacher's message is inspired, and you can feel the very presence of God in your midst. And those are among the most wonderful times, at least in my life, are those times when I can truly feel the presence of God. In those services where we experience that feeling, we get so caught up in praising God that we hardly ever notice if the service lasts an hour or an hour and a half. Now, I know not many of you have had that kind of experience with me at an hour and a half, but it is well to be here. We think to ourselves, we feel like in one way or another we truly have glimpsed God's glory. And if we could only stay in wherever that is for a while longer. But you know, we might even have those experiences when we're alone by ourselves, perhaps during our prayer time, during our meditation time. And we may have those feelings of where we sense the presence of God, and we do so with great excitement. Sometimes I hope you've experienced it, that God feels so close that you can almost touch him. And you may think to yourself, it is well to be here where I am right now. In those times, we can truly say we have glimpsed God's glory. And those wonderful and exhilarating experiences that we have are called mountaintop experiences. Mountaintop experiences, we've all used that expression one time or another. Did you know that expression came from the Gospel of Mark, from the gospel that we just read? Jesus had told his disciples that he was going to have to be subjected to suffering, that he was going to be rejected by his elders and the chief priests and scribes, and that he was going to be killed, and then 3 days later he would rise again from the dead. And then Peter rebukes Jesus for what he's saying. And I can just imagine Peter telling Jesus, now you quit saying those nasty things or I'm going to wash your mouth out with soap. I don't want to hear that anymore. You don't say that anymore. But Jesus continues. And he goes ahead and he tells them, if any of you come after me, deny yourself and take up your cross and follow me. So some days after Jesus tells his disciples this, he's going up to the mountaintop. And this is the only mountain and the only time a mountain is ever even suggested in the Gospel of Mark, which it tells us it is very important because mountains were extremely significant in descriptions in biblical times. I mean, they meant something big. Something big is happening. And it's big to Mark. It's the center of Mark's gospel. What it means is that Jesus is going to this mountaintop, this significant experience. And it's on this mountaintop where he will be transfigured. And it's going to happen right before the eyes of his disciples. His robes are going to be dizzying white. They're going to be glistened with whiteness. And then they're going to appear as if by magic, two figures standing beside him. The figure of Moses, which represents the law, and Elijah, who represents the prophecies or the prophets. You see, that's symbolic because the law and the prophets were two of the major points being described in the Old Testament of the Bible. And they indicate that their master, Jesus, was indeed to be the Messiah. And notice in the reading of the passage that we read, Peter wants to build 3 booths. He wants to do that to honor those 2 prophets and for Jesus. And then he turns, after he says that he wants to build these tabernacles or places of glory, he wants to criticize Jesus for saying that Jesus will suffer and die. 2 distinctly different points. Well, what do you think that's all about? Well, one of them is about glory, and the other is about suffering. And that's what the Transfiguration talks about, is glory on one side and suffering on the other side. And Peter, I suspect, a lot like you and a lot like me, wants to have as much of the glory, as much of the time as he can, and as much of the comfort as he can. And let's not be too quick to get over there to that cross. let's build those booths to emphasize glory, but let's stay away from the cross. We don't need to pick up any cross and suffer when we can stay right here in glory. Well, Jesus was sent into our world to be God's glory on earth. And his mission was really confirmed in this story. And that's why that story is so important to us as Christians. It affirms why Jesus was here in the first place. This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. And this is how Jesus understood the nature of his very mission. It is now that he knows for sure that he's going to be killed and suffer in carrying out his Father's mission. And on that day that he was killed, his enemies and all of the evil powers did hold sway over Jesus, but just for one day. Then God had a big surprise for them. God raised Jesus from the dead on that third day. So evil's victory was very short-lived. And all of those opposed to Jesus were, in fact, dismayed because they knew they had been defeated. And human life could once again begin to become what God intended for it to be. You see, Jesus came to give us life. He came to give us life in abundance, to give us eternal life. And as recipients of that gift, a gift that cannot be destroyed by the powers of evil and death, as a recipient of that gift, Jesus calls us to be a part of his mission, the mission that his Father gave to him. He says, if anyone would follow me, deny yourself and take up your cross. Take up your cross and follow me. That is a clear call from Jesus because of his mission to his Father, and that he wants to pass on to you and me today in McAllen, Texas. To join him in his struggle for human life, for your neighbors, for those who cannot care for themselves, to provide an abundant life to all the peoples of the world. Yes, to take up our cross and follow him, not just into the pews of the church, but into the community and into the whole world. Maybe, just maybe, we can figure out a way to follow such a call, even though it may be calling you and me for some suffering in our discipleship. Seems to me, my recollection of the story is that part of the mission of Jesus was to suffer on his way to the cross. And he has asked us to pick up our cross and follow him. Maybe Jesus even is saying to us, we need to be willing to pay the price. We need to be willing to suffer for the cross and follow him. Our motivation certainly should be the glory of God. And we have gotten a glimpse of the glory of God through Jesus and through these scriptures. And we see the glory of God today at Bible camps, worship services, in quiet times of powerful prayer, 12-step meetings, at events honoring community and national heroes, and other times as well. Yes, when we have been those kind of places, we have all had mountaintop experiences. Those times when we feel vibrant and alive and glad that we can serve. Those kind of mountaintop experiences when we have really glimpsed the glory of God. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is indeed, for us as Christians, our glory. It is interesting to me that Jesus would not allow his disciples to stay on the mountaintop and bask in the glory. He said, no, you're not going to get just all the goodies all the time. I want you to come down. Come down from this mountaintop. Deny yourself. Take up your cross and follow me. Let the moments of glory be your inspiration. Be your inspiration for years of service in this world. Life in this world is not lived on a mountaintop. Life is lived down here where all the people live. And you can make it a better place to live. Your neighbor's life can be lifted from despair. You can work for a better world. You can work to see that all of God's children get a fair shake and that they get along with one another. You can see that you are not guilty of slamming the integrity of another of God's children. That you are not guilty of judging those others who are different than you are. That you make it possible for all of God's children to be treated fairly and that they are not divided one against another. The disciples said, "It is well that we are here." They're referring to that mountaintop experience. It's well that we're here. It's well that they experienced the glory. And it's well that they experienced the taking up of their cross. Yes, they would like to have stayed in that nice, comfortable booth or tent or whatever, however you want to describe it, and stayed in the presence of glory. Who wouldn't? But Jesus knew and they knew they had to get into the real world of loving Christ, the real world of serving God. And so do we. Amen. Our invitation hymn today is on page 346, Where He Leads Me. We'll sing that, and I'll remind you following worship of Linger Longer in the Fellowship Hall. Please plan to join us for a few minutes there. Rise and we'll sing page 346.